Welcome, Spartans, to the latest podcast Evolve Book Club. I am your host, Aaron, and with me today we've got Krista.
Hey!
We've got Oren.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got David.
Hello, everybody.
And this week we're talking to you about Halo Coronavirus.
Hooray! I can't believe Master Chief got infected.
I know. Well, Cortana saves him, so it's not all bad.
Spoilers.
We are actually talking about Halo the Flood, that book that sometimes we take the mickey out of, but it's actually much better than people give it credit for. Okay, maybe we'll argue this as we go.
You can skip the Master Chief parts.
Yeah, I think it gets a lot of hate, but I actually quite enjoyed it.
I agree.
After a while, it gets a little redundant for me. Like, after a while, I'm just like, okay, I know Master Chief's gonna do this. Can we get back to the people I don't know what they're doing?
There's a lot of running and killing, but I do think it shines in the original content in the book. That's the part that I actually really enjoyed. But other than that, it is interesting to know what Chief is thinking when he's doing certain things in the game.
That is interesting. You actually get to see Chief be, like, tired. Like, at one point, he's like, oh god, how much longer do I have to do this? I'm like, oh, interesting.
We gotta save this for a second. I have to finish the intro. I must thank the patrons.
Oh.
We gotta do that. So, if you would like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/podcast evolved, isn't it?
I think that's who we are. Are we Podcast Evolved?
Yeah, if you go to halopodcastevolved.com, you will find links to it there. I know that much because Ian sorted that out. We used to thank all the patrons individually, but there are too many of you now. Also, shout out to all the patrons this month because we decided not to take any money off anyone for April because of coronavirus craziness, so a whole load of them gave us more money. That was not the intention.
Is that actually what happened?
Yes, a few of them upped their pledges, and some of them donated directly to us on PayPal, so thank you very much. You're all crazy.
Thanks, guys. You're crazy, yeah.
We wanted you to keep your quarantine money this month, but thank you, we appreciate it.
Spend it on Animal Crossing.
Yes, buy lots of nice things. Without further ado, we will talk. I will run through the details of our book, and then Oren's going to take us through the blow-by-blow of Combat Evolved. Like we said, the book is called Halo the Flood. The author is William C. Dietz? Dietz? How do I pronounce that?
I think that is correct.
That's okay.
And if it is not, I'm sure he will tell us.
Yes, this is his one and only entry in the Halo series.
Poor guy.
Yeah, the publisher was Del Rey Books in 2003, and Tor Books did the re-releases in 2010 and 19. It's available in all good formats, audio, ebook, and paperback. Watch if you get the audiobook version. We'll talk about that in a bit, but there are issues.
Yeah, I have things to say.
Yeah, this book's responsible for a lot of problems in my Halo life. It released way back in 2003, like we said. It's 381 pages long.
Way meatier than I remembered. Because I was putting this off, like Chris, I was like, oh, I'll get it done in a week or whatever. And then I looked at it again, and I was like, holy shit, that's a bigger book than I remember it being.
Which versions did you all read?
Definitive.
I have the definitive one, is what I have, yeah.
Did you guys read the foreword?
Yes, with Frankie's forward.
Yeah, where it's like, not a lot of people liked this book.
But it's still a good one.
It's still good, yeah.
Well, no, that's like what he said.
Yeah.
I just have the original audiobook, so I get none of that.
That's what you get for listening to audiobooks.
I had the same sort of experience like I did with our last month with Halo the Fall of Reach, where I listened to the old audiobook, but also kind of followed along / read parts in the 2010. And yeah, it's always funny listening along when the audio narrator says something and they just change it in the book.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff with it, but we will get into that shortly because we're going to pick this apart. Normally we would read the synopsis of the book, but all you need to know for this book is it is the story of Halo Combat Evolved with the bits that you don't see between missions. That is the entire thing. If you've not read this book and you've wondered why Foehammer's got her Pelicans straight away, or how they're able to resupply all the time, all these exciting things, this will tell you all of that.
There are some side stories that are cool.
Yeah, and alongside some conveniently explained reasons why things don't happen in the games that normally should. Like, for example, the Pelicans having no ammunition, and when they all actually have weapons, but like in this game, they don't. And it's kind of like, oh, we actually don't have any ammo because we had to bail out of the ship really fast. Like, yeah, okay, guys, I'll believe it.
I haven't played it, but I take it, is a lot of this stuff's covered in Fireteam Raven then, is it?
Not a lot of it.
That's probably worth a discussion at some stage.
I'll touch on to that, but I don't want to talk too much about it because our mission debrief guys will kind of do the deep dive to kind of plug that.
Yeah, those guys are great. I love the mission debrief guys.
That's some cool people.
They're pretty great, so I didn't want to steal their thunder, but yeah, it is worth mentioning of all the different like concurrent timelines. So I could just kind of go right into it.
Oh, the only other thing to say before you start, Oren, is that this whole book takes place over 3 days, so keep that in mind as we go. Yes,
a lot happens in 3 days. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about today in context of the book is what we're calling the Battle of Installation 04, which is kind of canonically what everyone kind of refers to these series of events. Obviously, in Combat Evolve, you know, you're Master Chief, you go around and discover what Halo is, you find Marines and save them and work with them, try not to kill them, and, you know, discover the Flood and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, unless you're Krista.
Hello.
And so this book, I'd say about half is a good way to put it, essentially rehashes the story of Chief. And like we were kind of saying at the beginning of the show, like it was very interesting to get, like David said, perceptions of what Chief is thinking between missions, and you kind of get the extended dialogue, if you want to think about it that way, to where there's added conversations between Cortana and Chief and other characters that just aren't in the game. Even like the Guilty Spark kind of saying more when we get to those sections of the book. So it does just add a different perspective. But like all transmedia, when you kind of retell the same events in a new form, there's always going to be like discrepancies and sort of things that don't quite line up. And, you know, we're going to get some of that with the Halo TV show, and we've gotten that already with like Forward Unto Dawn and Nightfall. Just when you add all these different elements, sometimes it just doesn't line up perfectly, but it does give you that other side, and other, you know, novelization allows you to get more out of certain elements than a video game would get out of it. To kind of break it up, I think we have 5 storylines, kind of how I've delineated it. We have Master Chief and Cortana, we have Captain Keyes, we have Silva and McKay, Foehammer, and then we have the Covenant side, Zuka and Yayap. Like I said, with Master Chief, he's kind of the easiest. It's essentially the story of CE. I don't think we really need to get into it too much, because if you're unfamiliar with this story, then we encourage you to play the game and come back to our show, and welcome to the Halo universe. Let's start with Captain Keyes. So we meet him on the ship, just like in the beginning. The novel picks up right after the events of Halo Reach. Right in the beginning of the game, they've slipped space away from Reach into a random point that's not so random, because Cortana got these coordinates from, you know, an artifact on Reach. Or no, the artifact on
Sigma Octatus.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And the Covenant is in hot pursuit, so that's when Keyes says all hands on deck. You have the first campaign mission where everyone's running around, Covenant board, and Keyes decides to land the Pillar of Autumn on the kind of crash course on the ring, and everyone spills out on lifeboats, and Keyes also goes on a lifeboat. So he's with his kind of cabin team, who, like, I didn't realize I loved so much after reading Fall of Reach, and then when we get them in this book, I'm just like, oh no, I know what happens to all of them.
Yep. You kind of read through this book knowing what happens to all of them. You're like, oh shit.
So that was a little unfortunate. But Keyes has this really badass moment right in the beginning of the book where there's a cloaked elite in the escape pod with him.
Oh, that's such a cool sequence, yeah.
He's just chilling there because he knows that, you know, someone on this ship is like a VIP. And Keyes like asks one of the other corporals or something and is like, hey, can I borrow your weapon, son? And then just shoots the elite in the head. And like everyone's just completely shocked and like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
Keyes like gives it back to him and is like, keep it loaded.
Yeah.
What I loved was that like it was a big setup for this Sangheili character, And they kind of really built him up as kind of like a spy, and like, they go in and they're not supposed to fight. They're just supposed to gather intelligence because the Covenant is still trying to gather intelligence on humanity and stuff. And it's just so cool that it kind of builds up his character. He's sneaking around, he's doing all this shit, and Key's just like 2 shots to the skull. This guy's dead. Like,
so such an unceremonious death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. So then after his lifeboat kind of crashes, they, him and the little squad, they run around, and it's not looking too good, and they eventually decide they're going to have to, surrender and get captured. And the idea of the Covenant taking prisoners is kind of relatively new. Usually they don't take prisoners, and so some of the crewmen were resistant, but they eventually get captured, and then he gets taken back to their ship, the Truth of Reconciliation. And then that's where...
Sorry, I was going to say, can we shout out to the one member of the bridge crew that turned traitor?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As they flee, I'd completely forgot about that.
Now, does that character lead them to Alpha Base, or just to where Keyes and them are?
Keyes doesn't go to Alpha Base at this point.
Right. So, I don't mean like the traitor, the UNSC traitor, like...
Keyes leaves him behind. They tie this person up and leave them there, and then the elites pick him up and then use him to like talk to Keyes and get him to surrender. I don't think he knows where they are because they're following their heat signatures, but they're just trying to capture them alive, which is why it's so difficult.
It's a she, isn't it? I forget her name.
I think it could be a she, yeah.
She points out to them which one the captain is, and then the elites execute the rest of the bridge crew and the Marines. And then execute her as well.
Which all of the crew was pretty well established in Fall of Reach to have them just executed right there. Like, the elites kill everyone except Keyes. Everyone dies.
Which is a shame, because in the mission you have, when you go when Chief goes and rescues Keyes, there's more Marines that are there. So you could have easily just kept some of the bridge crew as those individuals. Whatever.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I'm like, why are there humans on Truth and Reconciliation then? Why didn't we just use the bridge crew? But whatever.
Her name is Ensign Ellen Dowski. That's the traitor.
Bitch.
Bitch.
Got what you deserve.
She's who turned Keyes into Princess Peach. How dare she?
Yeah, there you go. So Keyes is captured, and I forget how Cortana and Wellesley discover that he's captured. That kind of prompts them to go do this recon mission. But they discover it.
I think, is Keyes in contact with him through his neural implant? I think he says to the crew that he's been in contact with both AIs, but they can't come and rescue him. And then I think that's how Cortana knows that he's been taken prisoner.
Yeah, we just have to keep running because the guys will come and get us when they can. And then obviously they get caught.
Yeah, because he was in contact with the Pillar of Autumn as well, because he gets like a status report in his head when the ship crashes. So I think that's how they get around that. It's the magical neural implant.
The magic neural implant, which actually has quite a plot device throughout the novel. So Chief and some ODSTs go and rescue Keyes. Keyes like, yo, I've heard the elites talking. We're on this place called Halo. We'll tell you all about it when we leave. By the way, I can fly the Covenant spirit.
By the way, he can speak Covenant languages. How did he understand all of this conversation, or were they having it in English?
Probably his neuroimplant translated it for him. It's probably what it was.
That seems dangerously close to nanobots.
Oh no, nanobots!
It's like Star Trek, man. It's fine. It's just like a Star Trek.
It's fine. Yeah, I don't care that much.
Nanobots.
But anyway, so they escape. Yay, all's fine and dandy. So then now Keyes is at Alpha Base, and they kind of do their little regroup. Cortana and kind of tells them about, or I think no, Keyes tells them about a control room, that we need to go to the control room. And so that's when they find the silent cartographer, and that kind of launches that phase of the campaign. And so Chief and Cortana go run off over there, and Keyes stays behind. And there also is another good moment actually before they leave with Keyes and Major Silva, who I haven't really introduced yet, but he's the kind of commander of the ODSTs. He's basically second in command to Keyes. And so he basically, when we get to his story, his crew set up Alpha Base and was very proud of all of his Marines, whereas Keyes has, 100% faith in the chief, and Silva has that sort of disdain and unappreciation towards the Spartan program in general.
Oh, he really hates Spartans.
Silva was part of the, his team was the ones who got killed by Master Chief when he was practicing at the gym that one time.
That's
Reach,
what I loved,
right?
how they tied that in, because it seemed like out of nowhere at the start of the book why Silva hates Spartan program so much, and I don't think he should even really know about it.
No, none of these people should know as much as they know about, the kidnappings and stuff like that. That does not make sense to me. No one should know that.
Yeah, but anyway, he knows this, and he really hates the Chief and Spartan program, so it's all about, what real humans can do as opposed to these fake humans, and keeps putting Chief down and calling the Spartan program a complete failure and all that kind of stuff. It's really unnecessary, but then later on you kind of figure out where his motivations is from, and that because he was aware of the planned, let's say, fight between Chief and these ODSTs that got 4 of them murdered, and he's just well, fuck those guys. So he really hates them because of that. I liked how that tied in to the Halo Reach book.
But can I just ask, why is it that everyone on Halo, every Marine knows the story of the Spartans and exactly what happened?
I have a huge issue with that. Every time it comes up, it's you should not. Was there did everybody have a conversation on the way to the Halo or something?
Everyone seems to know about the kidnapping. They know about the training. I'm pretty sure someone mentions clones or something.
Yes,
at one
someone
point.
mentions the clones. I'm that's not right. That's not. It's did Keyes super spill the beans? He's just all right, guys.
No way, he's the guy who doesn't talk. That's his whole thing.
But everyone fucking knew what happened and what Master Chief is, and you're just how the fuck do you all know this? Although it's a good job that this won't be an issue come the end of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
After that kind of heat dies down and Keyes kind of says, no, I trust Master Chief with this mission. We have other things that the ODSTs can do. Keyes then takes his ODSTs, or some ODSTs, some other Marines, and Sergeant Johnson, and they go investigate a weapons cache. And that weapons cache ends up being the kind of vault where the Foreigners locked the Flood in that then escape. And we get a really cool scene that's kind of just at the end of a chapter that I feel was positioned in the book earlier than when you experienced it in the game. And although you get that same gameplay moment in the book, I think this also adds, again, just another perspective to it, since you know it's coming. And it's kind of just their discovery of them going through this cavern and investigating the locked doors and all that kind of stuff. And then when the Flood actually kind of comes off, it's just pure chaos. Everyone is literally running around yelling bloody murder.
Did anybody question why Keyes was on this mission? Because I don't think that that is significant enough a weapons cache that Captain Keyes would go on that mission.
Yeah, that is true.
I thought that was weird.
He should be at Alpha Base. Why is
100%?
Why is Silva there doing pretty much everything that Keyes Silva obviously wants to be doing that, but at the same time, why isn't he the one going there and doing that? I know it's because it's for the plot to happen. We know it's all for the plot to happen, but I don't think it was a good enough reason for him to be... He should never leave Alpha Base. He should have just stayed there the entire time if they were using real military tactics.
It doesn't really make sense, but the way I sort of fill it in my head is that at this stage they still think whatever weapon this is will control the fate of the galaxy. They don't realise it's the ring. So I think Keyes is just I need to be there on the ground to assess this immediately.
Yeah, okay.
But then why not just bring an AI? They have 2 AIs.
Well, Keyes wanted Cortana and Chief to go find the control room because he wanted to control the weapon, whatever it is, and deemed that as priority 1. So that's one of the AIs, and then Wellesley isn't a smart AI.
He's a military tactician.
Good enough, I would have thought.
I think in this stage in the Halo universe, you still can't transport an AI without a suit of Spartan armor. So Wellesley is tied to whatever hardware exists in Alpha Base.
Actually, he's tied to Silva in particular. Silva carries around like him on a backpack. They describe it as like a thing that he has. Like he pulls it out of his ODST pod. He has like a command drop pod that's bigger than the rest and has more stuff in it. And one of them is the AI. And he talks about like Wellesley like having to go along with his plan because he's stuck, literally tied to him.
Oh.
They give it like some throwaway line. I can't remember what it does, but it's essentially makes it sound like Silva is like carrying him on him.
I wonder, is the other thing that you couldn't risk him falling into the hands of the Covenant? Like, at least Cortana is in Chief. So, in theory, if Chief gets killed, his suit go boom. Whereas Wellesley doesn't. He's strapped to the back of a meat sack.
Yeah.
I can probably fudge that in my head and make that make sense.
But Wellesley's this dumb AI, so he would probably just kill himself right away. He doesn't care.
That is a pickle. I don't know. Maybe, do you think it could have been that they just didn't have the manpower? And then, like, he's just felt like he needed to be one with his squad to go out and...
Yeah, we shouldn't dwell on it too much, I guess.
Keyes was micromanaging. This was his problem. He wouldn't have died if he had let people do what they were supposed to.
Now, do we know how Keyes gets from this point to Truth and Reconciliation again?
No. Keyes pretty much blacks out.
So the Flood get him...
He doesn't even know he's on Truth and Reconciliation.
They talk about the fact that the Covenant have fixed this ship, but then the Flood invade it because it's fixed and they want to get off. So I imagine that's their, like, the Keyes essentially becomes a proto-Gravemind kind of thing, so that's maybe their leader.
So, okay, so he just... I think that makes sense. Keyes essentially is just with the rest of the pact, and they kind of, while... Because it does cut back to Keyes a little bit, and we get more of, like, his internal struggle of trying to remember his name and his serial number, which is so good.
That's the one thing, like, the author does such a great job of describing what it's like to be infected by the Flood. I thought that whole scene was excellent with Jenkins.
Oh, Jenkins is great. He's, like, my favorite. I love Jenkins. He gets the worst card out of everyone. Like, he has the worst day, but it's such an interesting way to describe everything. It's pretty terrifying.
So he makes his way to Truth and Reconciliation again. The Flood now want to control the ship so then they can leave the ring and go do what they need to do. And we get those moments of Keyes trying to resist, not tell the Gravemind who he is, but trying to remember who he is, but not tell them where Earth is, all that kind of stuff. And then as Cortana and Chief go about their merry way doing what they need to do, they realize that in order to blow up the Autumn at the end of the game, they need Keyes' neural implant. And they're like, well, where's Keyes? Oh, he's over we found him again. He's now on the Truth and Reconciliation again. We're like, okay, well, let's go back over there. So Keyes props up his himself on like some sort of, like, I forget where exactly in the ship he is, but he's in some sort of control mainframe, I think. Probably the control room. So he's integrating himself into the control room to fully operate the ship. He's becoming more than just a combat form. He's becoming a proto-Gravemind. And we always talk about this all the time, is that terminal from CE Anniversary where you just kind of get the visual representation of that segment in the book where he is turning into a Flood and kind of resisting and all that kind of stuff. And this is where Chief finally discovers him, finds him, and realizes that he's gone so far and that there's only one thing left to do, which is to kill him, so to save information, to stop this process, and then to retrieve his neural implant. Very, very sad moment reading that.
It really is, because there's been a lot of books about Keyes with Keyes in it, with Keyes being amazing. So he's this great character that has such a sad and horrible end that you don't really realize when you play the game the first time.
Yeah, no, I definitely had like no idea, and it was just like, oh man, damn, the captain's dead. All right, moving on. But yeah, like the more media that kind of highlights him, he just is more and more of just a great, well-rounded, badass character. And we're even going to get more of him in the Halo TV show, so it's just more content of like who this awesome character is that we lost too soon. Anything else you want to say on Keyes before we move to the next group?
No, he has a great story, but there's not as much of him as I think we would like, but there's not much to talk about with him. Like, once he gets infected, it's like, the game's over for him.
And the highlight of his kind of moments in this book is definitely, unfortunately, when he's, like, being converted into the Flood. Alright, so dialing back the timeline, going back to the very beginning, the other UNSC characters we have is Major Silva and Lieutenant McKay. They're two ODSTs to the bone, and they give us another window into kind of the operations during the Battle of Installation 04. And so we meet the two of them on the Pillar of Autumn during the evacuation, and they're basically getting the defenses up and running, trying to combat the Covenant, and just kind of get their own escape pod out, so to speak. And once they do get out and get to the surface, they are the group that attack a butte and kind of rid the Covenant from this area so they can set up what we refer to as Alpha Base, which is their makeshift camp that they are able to kind of operate under while they're doing their operations there. Now, is Alpha Base, is it like one of those structures from the campaign?
I think it's bigger than that. That they kind of
occupied? But it's some form. I wasn't 100% sure of what type of installation / building it was.
It was some kind of spire, isn't it?
Well, it sounds more like one of those sort of flatter bunkery things, but it's up on a hill, but it descends down into the halo in the middle. That's what I have in my mind. Is it's like a bunkery sort of building. It's on this butte, but there's a slope on one side because that's the side that they bury the Scorpions on to take out the infantry charge at one point. And then down the middle of it is a spiral staircase of doom down to the Flood basement.
Yeah.
The Flood basement.
I'm kind of picturing, so the firefight map from Halo Reach that was kind of pseudo inspired by a section of the Halo mission where you have to capture the Marines, and there's those underground bunkers, those Forerunner underground areas that some of the Marines were held in when you want to rescue them in the campaign. That sort of layout is kind of how I pictured this Alpha Base, is that you have underground elements, you have surface elements, and it's just a giant compound that they're able to defend from the Covenant and stuff. So they set up Alpha Base during this whole thing. It's at this point, once they kind of get settled, they have, Captain Keyes gets rescued, and Chief and Cortana are there. We're talking about what the next phase of the mission is. That's kind of where we are in the timeline. And so when Keyes goes to the weapon cache and Chief goes to the silent cartographer, Silva remains at Alpha Base doing Alpha Base operation, but McKay, she leads other ODSTs to go reclaim and see what's left of the Pillar of Autumn. You actually see this in the Fireteam Raven mission called Rubble, and that's where they assault the Pillar of Autumn. It's completely overgrown, or not overgrown, but overtaken by Covenant forces, and they're essentially going back to the Pillar of Autumn to see what's left. Are they able to get munitions, guns, and all that other kind of stuff, and supplies?
They do one of those convenient plot points here where they mention that the cabin that housed all of the Spartan weapons was destroyed, which is why you've got none of the funky weapons they mention in Reach and anything cool.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh yeah, no, that bit was destroyed and all of Chief's guns are gone.
Oh no Spartan lasers. Oopsie doopsie.
Oh no.
Conveniently, we do have a pistol that can kill a hunter in one shot, though.
That is good to have.
Also convenient, they mention, I like that the hunters are not yet worms at this stage, because when they were doing the Keys bit and he escapes the Truth and Reconciliation the first time with the Banshee or the Phantom, they talk about how, or the Spirit, it's not a Phantom. He crushes the two hunters, but it talks about how it drives it crushes the hunter's armor through its torso as if it's got just a physical body, as if they're just a creature and they're not yet worms, which is amusing.
Yeah, there's also another moment where they describe the hunter's spine.
Yes, like Master Chief hits the spine or something. The hunters are not accurate.
No, but then again, I think the hunters aren't They're not accurate in Combat Evolved either, because they're definitely just like chunky meat people, and
they're just ground beef people.
there's no worms for a while.
Like the orange stuff is like the fat out of the ground beef that kind of comes out when you cook it.
Krista, can we not mention ground beef and fat? Because you're going to make me hungry and I'm in quarantine. I have to be good.
Oh.
I can't
well,
eat
no, you
all
don't.
of my
You're
food.
in quarantine. Just eat a whole thing of Oreos in one sitting.
Oh boy.
I'm having a good time.
So after this raid, which is successful, they're able to get some supplies. Then they go back to Alpha Base to kind of regroup. But on their way back, they discover a grunt that is just seemingly dead. But it turns out this grunt is alive, and this grunt is Yap, which we'll talk about more.
Is it Yap or is it Yap Yap?
Yap.
Yeah, what did I say? Yeah, Yap.
He has a great Twitter account, by the way.
Oh, does he?
Yap the Destroyer.
No, Yap's a different... This is Yap. Yap is still alive, I think.
Yap.
Oh,
I
is
was
it?
literally
Is it
reading the word and said it.
Because I had this... I think the last time we talked about this, I had the same thing where I went, is Yap and Yap the same person? But they're not.
Why is it spelt like Yap then?
Yap is Y-A-P-A-P. Yap is Y-A-Y-A-P.
Krista, it's all in the fantastic pronunciations of the audiobook. You just don't grasp the subtle details.
Yeah, I don't understand. I thought they were same person.
You see the first two letters and the last two letters, and your brain just fills in the rest.
Yeah, it's true.
That's how you read.
I don't actually read pronunciations and names and stuff. I literally just recognize the series of letters and keep going. It's pretty good. I have a good time. Especially fantasy novels where things are named weird. Nah, I'm not sounding that shit out in my head.
I didn't know how to say Jiralhane until I think I actually listened to the Halo Wars or Halo 2.
I had some awful pronunciations in my head for things like that.
Jiralhane.
Yes, while we're ranting about this, can we just say, Oren, Mjolnir?
Mjolnir.
That's where I used to literally call it Mjolnir, and that's where
Meow.
This book is why every time I go to mention the armor, I hesitate and go, fuck, how do I pronounce that word? And then I get it wrong. Mjolnir.
Well, he did the same thing in the previous book, too, in Fall of Reach.
But they really mention Mjolnir a lot here. Like, they talk about his armor. When I was listening, it's like, Mjolnir. And I'm like,
special armor.
It's just like driving into my head.
Yeah, anyway, audiobook troubles. Let's see where we're at. So they're at Alpha Base. Yap will tell you what his mission is in a little bit later, but he gets captured. Then all of a sudden, the Covenant are now ambushing Alpha Base. In this really, there was another. I don't think there's a traitor, but some elites kind of hijacked a Pelican and fly in and are able to kind of disguise themselves.
His capture is part of a plan.
Yeah. Yap gets captured on purpose, and he's kind of a decoy. I'll just say it just to make the storyline make sense. So he tells some other Covenant forces.
He's supposed to tell them when the Master Chief is there. This is the plan. They're going to raid Alpha Base when Chief is there, but he fudges it and like triggers it early.
Well, no, he triggers it on time because the Chief comes back after he goes to the control room, and Cortana tells him to find Captain Keyes. They found the flood, go save him. He literally runs like all the way back to Alpha Base. He's there for like 5 minutes and then leaves again, and Yap sees him and he's like, oh, the Chief is here. So he signals it.
I mean, there was even a sequence where he didn't have armor on and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was forced to take off his armor, which also doesn't make sense, because that armor does not come on and off very easily.
Well, they just don't mention the robot arms that are there and strip them down. That's just like a technicality.
It's in the robot arms are in the flood basement.
Wellesley engineered robot disc arms to help him off screen.
They do mention robotic cutting arms because I think they have those from when they seal up the flood stairwell. But I like that when he goes to do his meeting, Chief's basically like has a car alarm button for his suit of armor and just like puts the alarm on when he leaves. It's like, who the fuck's gonna steal your suit of armor, Chief?
Beep, beep, beep. The lights on his helmet go off like they blink twice.
So there's an attack at Alpha Base, and it's pretty much like a slaughterhouse. The beginning of the assault is described pretty brutally, of just kind of doctors and other support personnel just kind of getting wasted left and right, and then the ODSTs McKay finally come up, and they're able to eventually push the Comet back and kill everybody, and then everyone's kind of down on themselves. I'm like, holy cow. But they really look up to McKay and kind of her leadership through that fight and all that kind of stuff.
I did love the burying the Scorpion tanks.
That was cool.
And then using them against ground troops that way. Thought that was really cool. All the kind of defensive plans they had.
And also setting fire to the elites on the landing pad.
Just making them crispy. I wonder if they smelt like bacon.
I picture elites smelling more... I think a grunt would smell more like bacon. I think they're more like a beef. Elites seem like a good beef.
Oh, no.
Like a nice steak?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So during this point in the timeline is when Chief makes his way, because Chief already came and gone. He's on his way to the weapons cache, quote unquote. And so the Flood are out and about. And during this assault, the Flood also show up as well. And they are, they're kind of mixing that typical three-way fight where you have Marines, Covenant, and Flood all fighting each other. And so after everything calms down, McKay takes Silva kind of through their early stages of autopsies of the Flood. And we kind of get a pseudo explanation of what the Flood is and how they kind of function. Really, it seems like she knows all this information relatively quickly. But she explains the different types of forms, why they attach more so to elites and humans, whereas jackals and grunts, they're not as sentient, not as intelligent as the other races, so they kind of just transform into the more bulbous carrier forms as opposed to the tack forms. And Silva finds this all interesting and everything. And one of these individuals that's in the autopsy is Private Jenkins, and he's chained to a wall in a cell.
He wants to die so bad.
He is going through the same thing that Captain Keyes is going through, but
his Flood is defective. He talks about how it feels like weak or something, which is why his mind hasn't been cut off.
Yeah,
because I think he talks to it. He argues with it occasionally, where he talks about how the Flood mind comes out and then it lashes out at the crew while they're watching him, but then it uses up all its energy and sort of fades away into the background again and leaves him in charge of his mangled, very broken body.
Yeah, it was a flood spore or an infection form that was very old and not very strong that infected him. And just because of that, the flood spore just didn't have that much control over him.
I think that's actually worse than being turned into a combat form, is to be a combat form that knows it's a combat form.
Because at one point, she brings a mirror over to him and he sees what he looks like.
Yeah, he just recoils and lashes out.
Why won't anyone kill me? He comes into the battle hoping to die. He's like, I hope I will die in this battle. I just want to step in front of a bullet and die.
So he's chained up down there. Silva asks him, we need to plan our defenses. Where do you think the Flood will come from next? How are they going to attack us? And at first they don't think that he really understands, but then they kind of go through charades and Jenkins kind of motions down below. Then it's learned that there's, very deep underground sort of movements or something like that. They're not a cave because the Flood builds their own tunnel, but they're weak down below, and that's kind of the mindset of the Flood. So then Silva and McKay orchestrate this really cool trap maneuver to seal off sections of the underground to prevent them from coming up. I forget what exactly they do, but they have some form of bait.
Oh, it's such a cool scene.
Yeah, they drop it's very Aliens. I feel like it has that sort of vibe. They drop the Marines down on cables, and then they wait until the flood like come charging out of the tunnels, and then I think they pull them up quick and like shoot them as they rappel back up the stairwell.
Yeah, they pull them up and then drop a bunch of plasma grenades on them, and then like burn them out, which I thought was awesome. And then they drop back down again and then seal. And then when they went down, they were all fitted with cameras, and then Wesley kind of scanned the areas that were open and immediately started like cutting the correct like shape metal and plates so that it would fit, so that they dropped those plates down in the second wave, and then went down like way more of them went down the second time. I mean, in the whole fight, I think only one guy dies.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive.
But I thought the operation itself was cool, and that the fact that they found a whole bunch of like discarded and empty Covenant weapons, because the Flood have just been coming up trying to shoot through the grates.
Yes.
With the plasma weapons.
Yeah. Until they just ran out of energy.
Silva sucks, by the way.
Yeah, he's terrible. He tells McKay that you need to buy me 48 hours, but 24 would do, so then we can get off the ring, essentially. So Silva orchestrates this awesome mission, and they're able to kind of seal up the different entrances that the Flood's breaking their way through. And then Silva says that Wellesley and Cortana have been in talks and learned that Halo's a weapon, and that the Chief and Cortana now are going to destroy Halo. And so they're going to go to the Pillar of Autumn, and they're going to detonate the fusion reactor, and it's going to blow up. So what we're going to do is that we're going to hijack the Truth and Reconciliation, because it has been going under maintenance the past couple of days, and so it is operational, and we can then take the Truth and Reconciliation, get off this, keep on calling it a rock, but it's not a rock, get off Halo, and return to Earth with this Covenant ship and all these artifacts and the Flood specimen. We'll have all this cool stuff, and we'll be recognized as heroes, because the UNSC really needs a win right now, because we've been losing so much during this war, and it's the perfect plan. No one can second guess me. And so it all sounds great, and so then they start heading over where the Truth and Reconciliation is. But this plan kind of just inflates Silva's mind, because even though McKay, for being such a badass that she is able to, infiltrate the Covenant forces, and the Flood's also here, because this is basically right after Chief leaves Truth and Reconciliation after getting the neuroplant from Keyes. So Wellesley has access to a lot of like the video feed from Chief's helmet. They're able to they have like a map of the ship layout, and they have all this recon from it.
And also from the first time that they were there, when they rescued...
when he rescued Keyes the first time.
Yeah.
And so like there's this really cool scene where they go to the grav lift that Chief went up to go back into the Truth and Reconciliation, and there's like 6 hunters and like 2 units of elites and other Covenant, and they just unleash a volley of rocket launchers over and just completely destroy essentially everybody down there, so then they can get back up. Reading that kind of made me feel like when you upgrade your ODST forces or your Marine forces in Halo Wars to the rocket launchers, and you just unleash their special ability, and it's just a wave of rockets just flying at other enemies. So really, really cool stuff. Then once they get control of Truth and Reconciliation, they quote unquote have won the battle. They're able to take control over it. There's still some Covenant on board. There's still Flood on board. They're not 100% like in control. And so Wellesley and McKay kind of say, we need to, stop and kill everything, because we can't have any of this coming back for us. But Silva's getting the better of himself and saying that, no, we need to leave like now, because Chief's going to be blowing up the Autumn real soon. We don't know how much time that we have.
He also wants to bring some specimens home as well.
Right, that too. So he doesn't want to kill everything, but McKay and Wellesley know that like even if one parasite comes back to Earth, it can destroy the entire planet. And there was an earlier scene where another officer approached McKay and said that these fusion reactors over here, like they're very unstable, and if like something goes wrong, if someone throws a rock at it, it'll blow up the whole ship. And since that we don't have control over the whole ship yet, I recommend that we post someone here to guard it, in case the Covenant do something that's like a last stand sort of a thing. So McKay does that, kind of before this final confrontation with Silva. And then after Silva says, this is, my final order, we're leaving now, McKay goes down to that area, relieves the crew that are there, and drops a grenade.
Well, first Jenkins,
Oh, that's right. Jenkins does it too. I guess he escapes. Yeah, he escapes from Alpha Base, makes it over there, and he wants the...
No, they bring Jenkins with him.
Because they're bringing Jenkins home.
They think they can cure him.
So yeah, she goes down, and Jenkins there, and Jenkins starts making a lash for it, and they, have a moment where they look at each other, and McKay realizes that, what Jenkins wants to do and realizes what she needs to do, and, as she drops the grenade, they have another moment where Jenkins essentially, says thank you without, verbalizing it, and Jenkins finally gets to die along with everybody else on the Truth and Reconciliation. And, so that's another sad moment where everyone dies.
Yep.
It's a pretty hardcore ending.
Yeah, for a Halo book. Definitely.
And that Wellesley is also considered to be completely erased in this explosion. All the Flood, all the Covenant, and then those characters. So that's why we never see him again.
Oof.
Which is a shame, because McKay is so badass.
McKay is great. They could do a prequel with her.
Yeah. Alright, anything else on them? That's about it. Silva sucks. McKay's awesome.
Silva super sucks, especially when he's like, oh yeah, the Flood, let's just bring them to Earth, it'll be fun.
We'll be heroes.
It'll be a big Flood party, yay!
Woohoo! Alright, so next on our little timeline is a minor character with some big important roles that I just wanted to touch on is Foehammer, Echo 419. She is both pretty present in the game as well as the novel. She essentially picks you up and drops you off every couple of missions, and she has a few highlights in the novel, specifically in the beginning when we have the Pillar of Autumn being attacked. We're back in space at the beginning of the Battle of Installation 04, and she is rounding up people and kind of anyone who doesn't get to a safety escape pod and kind of providing space support outside the ship. And then she eventually, once she's on the ring, she then is the one that, as the chief is rescuing the life pods that are scattered about, she's going around picking up everybody else, going back to Alpha Base and kind of being the carrier for everybody. And she just kind of gets a little bit more highlight in the novel, because like we said at the top of the show, this novel really kind of connects the missions a little bit more than the game sometimes does. So when you go into her Pelican, we see kind of where the characters are going, and we get some dialogue to learn more about her and some novel point of view from her internal thoughts before we go to the next mission, where then everyone jumps out, sort of a thing. And then another moment that we see her in, kind of in the middle of the book when she's picking up Chief, I kind of liked, because she has a little bit more character after Chief discovers 343 Guilty Spark before he teleports to the library. She's going around picking up other Marines, but Chief goes away, and then she's like, oh my gosh, where did he go? It was right there. And she's like, well, I guess I'll just pick up these other Marines and go away, I guess. It's nice to kind of get those highlights. And then ultimately at the end, when Chief is blowing up the Autumn, he's doing the Warthog run, and Cortana tries to hail her. So then she can pick up Chief and Cortana, but unfortunately some Banshees behind bombed her. She lost altitude and crashed into the Pillar of Autumn, and she died as well.
Rip.
Sad times. So those are our kind of human characters. We do have some Covenant point of views from these two characters, Zuka Zamami and Yayap. So Yayap, we mentioned earlier, he gets kind of captured in part of a plan. He's essentially a grunt that's a little bit smarter than some of the other grunts. We first meet him during the assault of the Pillar of Autumn. He's running around doing his grunt thing, and then he kind of gets a little cowardly, and him and some other grunts kind of hide. And that's when they discover this elite, Zuka Zamami, who we don't really see too much of. I guess we see him on the ship before the fight, correct?
Yes, because he gets injured.
You first meet him when he's on the ship and he's unconscious.
Yeah, when Yayap finds him and brings him back. He doesn't. Then there's another scene. Okay, I didn't know if there was one before that. So we meet this elite who's unconscious,
And Yayap has this bright idea where it's like, hey, instead of fighting, let's save this commando elite and we'll be recognized as heroes, and then we won't have to fight because we saved an elite or something.
Which is kind of hilarious.
Which is funny, he takes the elite back for medical treatment that we know later they definitely don't do.
Oh yeah, that plan is totally stupid. The elite would rather die.
And he even says that, like, you should have left me to die instead of saving me. My troubles would have been all gone.
But then he shoots himself in the foot because he saved this elite and then didn't realize that this elite now is on a vengeance quest to get the armored demon.
And the elite likes him now, so he's just like carted around.
So when they finally escape and they get ringside, the Zuko wakes up and, you know, they have that kind of confrontation. He's like, why did you save me? All right, well, now you're my buddy since you saved me.
You're my best friend.
He was fighting the chief, and the chief, I guess, you know, threw a grenade or something to where he knocked him out.
Shot him in the head.
Shot him in the head?
I think he shoots his helmet and it just deflects the bullet, but like it fucks him up.
Yeah, it knocks him out.
I thought like an explosion happened and he just kind of got hit against the head on the wall or something. So yeah, so now Zuko has this like begrudging vengeance for the chief, and that's kind of his storyline and his motivation for the whole book. So he decides to get Yayap to help him on this quest. He goes back to the Truth and Reconciliation and he talks to one of the prophets, and they kind of have like a debrief of kind of like what the status is with everything. And I'm just looking at my notes.
I think he goes back to like, he tries to get the prophet and his superiors to authorize him to go and hunt down Chief, and they're like, no, one human's not worth the effort. Everything will be fine. Then Chief raids the ship, and suddenly the prophets disappeared, and the other elites are like, yeah, they authorized your plan. Go fucking kill him.
Yep, pretty much.
It's just like, yeah, it turns out the demon's actually as deadly as you told them he is, because here's all the CCTV footage of him fucking his way through the ship, like killing everyone.
Yeah. So this is all kind of as Chief and the Marines are setting up Alpha Base and discovering what Halo is when this kind of conversation's going on. So Zuma Mi's kind of first crack at getting back at the Chief happens at the Silent Cartographer. I'm not sure how he knows that Chief is there, but he's just there.
He knows Cortana went through the Truth and Reconciliation looking for certain files and certain things. So he traced what Cortana searched for, and then went back, okay, they want the control room, then they'll need to go to the map room, so I'll wait at the map room.
Yeah, and he's like the worst, like hiding behind an object to jump somebody, because that's literally his plan every single time.
It's almost like he's the evil villain, like secondary evil villain that just never like has all the stupid plans and just it never comes to fruition.
He is a Scooby-Doo villain, that's
what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from those specific moments, he is like a really strong, like elite character. So he tries to jump Chief at Cartographer. Didn't really write anything more specific in my notes, but I don't know how the Chief I think the Chief just gets away. They don't really have a confrontation.
The Chief murders everybody, so he hides. Is essentially what happens. So it's when like you right before you get to like the button that opens the door to get back into the map room, your two hunters attack you, and he just murdered these two hunters, and then Yap Yap is there, and then like you murder all the other grunts, and Yap Yap is like, nope, I'm out of here, and the elite is just like, yeah, fuck this. He's in stealth, so he just watches this happen. And he's like, yeah, I'm not having this.
And he also just watches Chief look at the map room too, and Chief's like not doing anything. And I was just like, why are you watching like the Chief just stand there while Cortana's talking? And like, why didn't you jump him then? But yeah, whatever.
He just watches Chief while the cutscene plays out and goes like, where did these black bars come from?
If you thumbstick over to the left, you'll see Zuko behind a pillar watching Chief's cutscene. So then after the map room happens and Zuka and Yayap get away, this is where they have their plan to go to Alpha Base and signal me to come once the demon comes back. And Yayap is like, great, whatever, of course, Master.
I just want to die.
Yeah, I regret everything. That said, though, Yayap does have some pretty good ideas later on. So Yayap gets captured. by Silva, or not Silva, McKay, like we said earlier. The chief comes back after assaulting on the control room, and that's when Yayop sounds the alarm. Zuka Zamami comes back, and they have the whole raid and Alpha Base like we talked about. And once again, when things start to go south, Zuka and Yayop kind of get out of there. Well, actually, Yayop has a smart moment to where when Zuka comes and frees Yayop, Yayop says, "I saw the demon in the launch bay, so let's go over there." And he's like, "Yes, we'll go over there." And then when they go over there, no one's there, and it's just like a banshee or two. And Yayop is like, "You're the only one who knows how to fly a banshee out of the two of us, so we got to use it so we can go away." And Zuka's like, "You lied to me, you coward," and all this kind of stuff. And then realizes that, well, everyone's dying and the demon's not here, so I guess
Yayop pulls a gun on him.
That is, yes, he does.
Yeah, it's a really big moment.
Yeah, he pulls it, like, he has a huge big dick moment. I've never seen a grunt have such a big dick moment.
Well, not until Stolt years later.
Well, yeah, but...
Stolt the Uber grunt.
He doesn't count. He's not even a grunt, really.
Yeah, so he pulls a plasma pistol on him. Yeah, I forgot about that. I guess that sways Zuka to then, let's get in the Banshee, let's retreat, run away, rethink ourselves, and find out what's going on. So then they fly towards the Pillar of Autumn, and they get out of it, and they walk the rest of the way, and they basically are... Zuka has to impersonate just some other, lower-ranking commando officer, because if they knew it was him, then they know what kind of mission that he's on, and wondering, why is he here and not out hunting the demon or dead, since he's not being honorable.
Yeah, it's the fact that his mission has already failed. That's why he can't show up with his name. So, because he's already terrified, because at this stage, the Prophets already had the other elite leader up on the ship executed and had his head on a stick.
Yes.
And had Zuka made this is what'll happen next time you fail. Yeah. So he's scared shitless to go back without killing Chief. So that's why he agrees to Yap Yap's crazy plan to go back to the Autumn.
He's like, well, I got nothing else to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, while he's there, he overhears some of the other commanders say, "Oh, one human just crash-landed a Banshee at the Pillar of Autumn here. We need someone to go kill him." And that's when they say, "What, one human? Surely we don't need to do that again." And he said, "Actually, this is the one human that's killed everybody, all these fleets and battalions and all this kind of stuff." And then Zuka just emerges out of the shadow and raises his hand. "I'll do it." He's like, "Great." And then he quickly grabs Yayap. So obviously this is after most of the game at the end, when Chief is going to the engineering room to then blow up all of the fusion reactors with the grenades and rockets. And Zuka has Yayap stay at a control console or something like that.
He's at the CCTV desk, basically.
He's watching or something, and Yayap's like, "Yeah, I'll stay here, I'll do what you need me to do." And right when Zuka leaves, he sets up shop, grabs a lawn chair, and then leaves.
No, he lies to him. He says "Oh yeah, he's in the engine room or some shit," but it actually turns out to be true, because that's Chief goes through the engine room. So he totally lies and just "Yeah, I can't see him, but he's probably here," and then packs his bags and gets the fuck out.
Yeah. So he sends Zuko away, and then Yayap just knows in the way it's written in the book, it's he leaves not because he thinks Zuko's going to die, but he leaves because he thinks and knows that everyone's going to die. So he wants to kind of have his last moments in peace. So he goes out from the Autumn and just kind of in the wastelands and just hangs out and just reflects until the eventual destruction. Meanwhile, Zuka makes his way to the engineering room. He gets in an elevator, and this is the scene where an elevator door, when you're playing the game, comes up right after you blow all the 4 engineering reactors. And the elevator pops up, and then it closes and then descends. And so when it pops up, the elites that is in there shooting at you on the shade turret is Zuka. He's trying to kill the Chief, but then Cortana activates the elevator and make it go down. Now, if you lob grenades and stuff in there, you can kill him. Chief, I think, does throw some grenades, and then that kind of blows up everything and blows up the elevator, and the elevator goes crashing down, and Zuka goes and falls down along with it, and then that's how Zuka dies.
Is that what happens in the game, though? Because in the game, I remember...
No, in the game, there's no shade turret.
Well, there's no shade turret, but it still opens and closes, right?
Yeah, you just, like, kill him and then you jump in the lift and go up.
There's no open and close, there's no Cortana drops the lift, none of that happens. The lift comes down with a bunch of elites and 2 grunts with fuel rods. You just throw a bunch of grenades at them and kill them, and then that's it. You carry on with your day. There's no shade turret.
I thought it closed and then you run off to the right and then you go through like another door and then that's where the warthogs are.
Oh, no. Unless there's another way that I've never gone before.
No, actually, I think you're right because I think that's a loading screen. So you go down the elevator and then it loads the warthog run. And then when the elevator opens, that's when you run out and then to the right. And then that's where the warthogs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
While you mention those discrepancies, there's a couple of times where they clearly didn't know what changes they were making to the game. Like they dreaded the cave that's not a natural formation. Because when they talk about that at the start of the game, it's like, oh, Master Chief almost missed the cave, you know. And you're like, no, it doesn't blend in. It's a great big fucking square tunnel. Because someone changed it and didn't tell you.
Well, there's bits of trivia that kind of contradict that a little bit. And I'll tell you about it when we get there.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're almost there. I mean, that's essentially Zuka's storyline. And like we mentioned, at the beginning of the show, there are discrepancies just when you translate the same events in 2 different mediums for 2 different purposes. So it's as close as it really can be without... Because if you made a direct copy and paste, there's less room for more creative input. And even still, like we were touching on at the beginning of the show, there's only so many ways that the author can say that he goes through a room, kills all the enemies, goes through a room and kills all the enemies. Because... like that, you do a lot of that in the game to where that's what the encounter is and that's what gameplay is. But in the novels, that's condensed and stretched depending upon the dramatic tension that the author wants to put into those specific moments. So you might have like when Chief's assaulting the control room, like that whole mission. You know, that whole mission's like 20 minutes if you really play it. But he condenses that into like, I don't know, 4 pages to where he kills everything. He kills a wraith and then, you know, he's there at the spire. So that's just some of the not necessarily discrepancies, but some of the translations between the 2 mediums. And that's the novel. Those are the 2 or the 4 or 5 different storylines that kind of are concurrent with the game. To kind of just touch on the arcade game, Fireteam Raven, before we move on to trivia and the adjunct section. There's 5 multiplayer missions for the game if you haven't played it. The opening mission is called Escape, and the ODSTs that you play throughout the game are within Silva's and McKay's squad. No, not squad, but like their unit, their battalion of ODSTs. So you get orders from Wellesley throughout the game, and you kind of fight alongside of McKay and them, even if they're not on screen in those games. So the first mission is during the Pillar of Autumn ambush. It's called Escape. The second mission is called Rubble. And this is one we talked about earlier when McKay leads an assault of ODSTs to the Pillar of Autumn to kind of get supplies. Then the third mission is Alpha Base, and this is during the Covenant invasion ambush of Alpha Base, and then the introduction of the Flood. Then the fourth mission is called Ice Canyon, and this is just kind of added, not really highlighted in the book at all, but this is just when ODST forces are in the canyons where the control room generally is fighting the Flood and some Covenant, and this lines up with the 2 Betrayals mission where Chief is flying around to the different, what are the energy reactors called, that he has to destroy with his energy shields. So when Chief kind of runs around and does that little mission, you and your ODST squad is fighting on the canyon floor. And then the final fire team... Oh wait, there's 6 missions. There's Raven Down and Last Stand. Well, what's Raven Down? I don't know. Anyway, well, these last 2 missions... Last Stand is where the Pillar of Autumn is, and you're doing your last stand and you're fighting everything. I don't remember what Raven Down is. Does anyone know offhand?
I'm Irish. I don't get to play this.
I haven't played Fireteam Raven start to finish.
Don't worry about it, Oren.
Anyway, after that, you have that kind of concurrently going on. And like I said, the mission debrief guys will talk about this. I'm not sure what their schedule is, but
I have no idea.
their upcoming, schedule and all that will kind of have a little bit more context for how those missions relate to the, all the other things that we've talked about today for the Battle of Installation 04. For the 2010 re-release, as well as the 2019 edition, there's an adjunct section at the end of the novel that kind of add a little bit more perspective to the events. David, I don't know if you want to highlight any of them in particular.
Yeah, I'll talk about them. I mean, there's one that's essentially told from a carrier form's point of view as it infects a Marine and then eats his memories and takes over its body. It's short. It's pretty gruesome. I kind of thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like a poem.
Yeah, that's the way it's kind of written. It's kind of single words and it kind of elaborates a bit as he takes over. There's a cool one that is a breakdown of everything that happens from kind of Thel's point of view. Tel Vadimi, who becomes the arbiter in the second game. So that's his first kind of talk about, because obviously he wasn't the character when this book was written and when the first game was made. And obviously he was in charge of the fleets that went to Halo. So you kind of think that he should have been involved a little bit. He was not really talked about at all. But then the characters we meet are kind of lower level, kind of on the Covenant side. They're not really fleshed out that much. And like you said, a lot of the discrepancies happen along on the Covenant side. Because again, when this book was written, the Covenant wasn't really a really fleshed out race at the time.
Yeah, or what their religion and type of motivations were.
So it is interesting in the background just to see the things he was ordering and what he was doing and the different segments of, as things went wrong and what he did and stuff like that. And obviously there was a back and forth where he fell out with the Prophet, and the Prophet was the one making all the terrible decisions with taking troops away and sending them places. And it makes an interesting note where it talks about sending troops to the gas giant, the actual refinery where you go to later on in Halo 2. Thought that was cool. That's where the first mission where you go as Thel. I thought that was really kind of badass. What else is there? There's also a really interesting kind of part. Yeah, but he pretty much, it sounds like he kind of, that Prophet gets captured on Truth and Reconciliation and sends a plea for help, because when McKay and Silva take over Truth and Reconciliation, they find this Prophet and lock him up. And we're like, hell yeah, we're going to be heroes. And then the Prophet sends a distress beacon, hey, come help me. And Thel is like, fuck that, access, request denied. And then tells all of his ships to evac to the other side of the gas giant. So that's pretty much where that fleet just kind of, the survivors of it kind of bugger out. It's kind of interesting to see that kind of stuff where he talks about an infected ship and then all the kind of non-infected ships then blow up, attack the kind of flood ship and stuff like that in space. That's the most interesting part. The rest of it, kind of meh.
It almost alludes to stuff we already know, half of the stories, and it's just okay, whatever, old news.
Yeah,
there's one about, it sounds like a Marine that's kind of trying to talk to somebody, and no one's listening, and eventually the flood comes and takes him. I think it's kind of what it's implied.
Yeah, it seems like an isolated individual that escaped a flood outbreak, and he's trying to see who can help him, and it's just an Oni recording that they have.
Other than that, I don't think there's anything else of note in the adjunct section.
Yeah, I'll just say what they are. The other three sort of segments. One is excerpts from Zuka Zamami's personal journal while he was on the Truth and Reconciliation.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't really add anything else. It just kind of gives you just more perspective of his character, just more of his internal thoughts that couldn't have been added into the book. A little bit more about his desire and his also some questions and ponderings that he has. Then there's 343's sort of reaction and status report after the flood eventually have that outbreak on Installation 04, and he kind of talks about how after all these years of silence, there's finally activity, and it's just ignoring protocol, and the flood is now out, and there's this big old mess that I have to clean up, and him just kind of venting about that and kind of the progress that he's trying to make. And then the last thing is there's a terminal transcript of the librarian having her own status report of her categorization of life on Earth. I don't really remember that one. Like I said, it's kind of just general information about, and kind of just fleshes out just a little bit of the sort of mindset. And I think those are just kind of added in to provide a little bit more clarity in their respective lore aspects as they support other novels and other events that kind of branch off from this story. So it kind of gives you a little more insight, maybe in conjunction to the Forerunner trilogy when you look at that and the Halo 3 terminals. So then the last thing I want to kind of address is the re-release of the 2010 version, where they rectify some misconceptions, inconsistencies, and stuff like that. Not a lot of drastic changes between the two versions. There's a lot of just general syntax and incorrect sort of words and titles and genders and stuff that are listed. So those are rectified and cleaned up. So you have things like, what type of shotgun the chief used, the gauge, different characters' genders, and different characters' like titles. The mission clock at the beginning of each chapter was also updated to be more accurate, as well as like different weapons and their like abilities and who's using what when. That was kind of updated. And then there's 3 other ones that I kind of wanted to just highlight that I think are a little bit more interesting. In the updated version, the hunter is now referred to as the neutral it instead of a gender pronoun, which I found interesting. That do hunters have genders, or because they're all made up of worms, the individual worms may have a gender, but the physical hunter doesn't?
I don't think they have genders.
So, I'm not that much into the Let Go Lobe.
I mean, they're called Bond brothers, but other than that...
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, a little tidbit there. They added the Cyclops in the game, so when when McKay and them are getting resources from the Pillar of Autumn after their assault on it, it was previously said that someone was using a loader type exoskeleton to get some supplies, but then they called it a Cyclops, which was introduced in Halo Wars 1. So that was kind of a nice little integration of that type of machinery into earlier in the lore. Or technically it'd be later because of the timeline. And then lastly, in the original novel, the prophets were described as having an anti-gravity belt to help them walk, but that was later changed to an anti-gravity throne to reflect what we see the prophets sitting in Halo 2 and Halo 3. Alright, we got trivia, and I think that's it, right?
Yeah, that'll do it. The trivia is actually very interesting, so I only kind of looked at it today when I was kind of looking at the script and stuff. It kind of gives me a different perspective on the book now, and a little bit of like, okay, maybe don't be so harsh on it. So William C. Dietz was originally reluctant to accept the work for 2 reasons. First, he had no prior knowledge of Halo, and second, Bungie and Random House, which is the parent company of Del Rey Books, gave him only 10 weeks to write the novel.
What?
Yeah, he would usually take 6 months to write a book, but he was only given 10 weeks. Nevertheless, he changed his mind after checking out Halo's popularity at his local video game store, and after his agent negotiated a good pay because of the counterproductive delay. He was confident in this kind of work, and he had already written the Dark Forces trilogy for Star Wars, so he took on the job. Before he started writing, Dietz played Halo Combat Evolved several times, and took time to write notes and copy down some of the dialogues. He came to love Halo at that point, and he still plays the game from time to time. This is from an interview that was done a few years back. More than a decade later, he also read Halo Fall of Reach, considering that the universe had already been firmly established and the character of Master Chief and stuff like that. He worked closely with Bungie and asked for permission to include several additional stories and characters that were not in the original game, especially the Covenant side, as the book would be more appealing to readers who already knew the game's story. So Bungie were reluctant and didn't want to give in, but however, they did when they found out that everybody was going to die at the end anyway. But could you imagine reading this book with none of that extra stuff in it?
That's what I mean. Like, you need to have a different perspective to make it more interesting.
So I thought that was quite interesting. So that the stuff that he added in about the end of the Shade Tour and the lift seems weird given the fact that he played the game several times. And it wasn't the fact that this game was in the middle of being made when the book was being written. It was like this came out 2 years after the game. Do you know what I mean? That he had played. Anyway, the original cover has Banshees flying overhead with their covers up, meaning they have no pilots. This is the same as the true of the original cover of Halo Combat Evolved, which is interesting. The original finalized cover is remarkably similar to that of id Software's Doom. Both depict the main character gunning down hordes of enemies against a reddish background. That was just a random bit of thing. Anyway, the 2010 reissue has a bunch of different stuff about Mjolnir armor that doesn't look like Mjolnir armor, doesn't follow the correct lines, all that kind of stuff. He's dual-wielding M7 submachine guns, which never happens in the first game or in the novel at any point.
But it looks cool.
Yeah, the novel was written before many of the Covenant beliefs were further detailed in Halo 2. It bears several discrepancies with the later material. For example, Covenant show no particular reverence towards 343 Gizly Spark and the Sentinels, and regard them as enemies. In Halo 2, it later establishes Sentinels are revered by the Covenant as holy warriors of the sacred rings, while the Monitors are among the most holiest of Forerunner creations, as oracles. In addition, John, or the other Spartans, are never referred to by the epithet demon, and as discussed with more pragmatic terms by the Covenant. Although their battlefield prowess and high kill counts are acknowledged, however, the later established nomenclature is used in the Adjunct section of 2010 edition, such as Zamami's journal entries. There you go. You know, maybe back off, guys. Maybe don't be too harsh.
Yay!
It is what it is. It's a good book. People should read it if they're a fan of Halo.
Yeah, it's worth reading. Even if you're just going to read it once, it's worth it.
I mean, it's worth reading if you happen to be stuck at the house and unable to go outside for anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. It's a great book to just pick up.
Except Amazon's not working right now, so I mean...
Well, luckily you can get it digital. You can also do an audiobook, although it is a little janky because it's come from the earlier audiobook era in terms of pronunciations. And also, actually, while we're talking about this, Aaron, when you were listening to it, do you think that this book has not the best editing?
A little bit.
Compared to, I'm thinking back, I don't know if I noticed this too much on other audiobooks, but listening back to how Scott Brick does his when we interviewed him, to kind of plug that interview from a few shows back, and he talked about how his voice would get, a little, not necessarily strained, but your voice is definitely different from the beginning to the end of your recording session. And it seemed that, like, in the middle of chapters and paragraphs, not only they wouldn't be edited to where there's a pause between the paragraph breaks, but then also the audio recordings would just switch, and just his tone and the voice actor's voice would just be different. And I found that very distracting because I didn't know if it was like a new segment or a new point of view, or if it's the same point of view. And so I was jostled for the first maybe 30 seconds or something.
I wonder if, like, the way the book was rushed, that probably the audio recording guys didn't have a lot of time to do this. I assume the audiobook came out roughly in line with the novel, so I'm wondering if maybe if he only had 10 weeks to write it, maybe the rest of it was panicked and rushed as well, and it got a quick pass in the edit and away.
Yeah, maybe so. I just feel like it could have had a little bit more breadth for the editing. I mean, his recording, I think is generally fine. I just think it could have been edited better. So anyway, those are my notes on that. I think that's about it.
So, overall thoughts, how do we feel?
Not the best Halo book, but it's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it bad by any stretch, but it does what it needs to do, and I think it adds a lot of perspective for first-time readers, and even rereading it, we're able to find some enjoyment some of the time. I mean, there are times where I kind of just, it's the same info, but it's definitely worthy of your time.
Agreed. I really enjoyed the bits that kind of added and fleshed out the stories. I liked McKay, Silva, everything about the oldest team Marines. The Covenant not so much because of the discrepancies and the characters were kind of weird, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Overall, I would say it is worth a read. I would never tell somebody to, not read this book.
That seems fair and reasonable. Like I said, it's a lot of people regard it badly, but it's not a bad book. Like, it's not awful. I don't think there's ever been a Halo book that I've went, that's a piece of dog shit. The exception being the whispery audiobooks, but that's just, I can't cope with that.
Well, that's the voice acting.
I said, that's just the narration. I can't cope with that. That just is a thing, but I don't think there's anything Halo related apart from possibly Escalation.
Yeah, Escalation's a hit or a miss.
Like, I would consider Escalation weaker than this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would agree.
It adds more depth to the Halo universe than Escalation does.
That is true. On that note, I think we will wrap for this week. We are going to go back to quarantine and continue to wait for the flood to come and take us all.
Awesome.
Where it's safe.
Super positive outlook here.
With any luck, the demons will save us.
Yay, demons!
Hooray!
So, as always, thank you very much for listening. Please visit the website, halopodcastevolve.com, and you can get links to all of our social stuff and our other bits and pieces there. You should expect a few more episodes because thankfully we don't record in person, so social isolation and quarantine have had no issue on us.
Yes, thank goodness.
Although it does seriously slow down the speed at which I might be editing because I'm slowly losing the will to live.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, don't say that. This is enough of a will to live. This show right here.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about all of our patrons. Think about every one of them.
Yeah, you have to live for the patrons.
Every one of them that decided to give us more money instead of keeping their money. Once again, thank you to everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're crazy.
Yes, thank you.
And if you're listening to this, take care and look after yourselves. And give us a shout in Discord if you're feeling lonely during social isolation. We're all there.
I think we have voice chats and stuff too, so...
Yes, you can talk to us.
Yeah.
We can all play together, survive together. But yeah, definitely do yourself a favor and keep yourself in check.
Yes, now's the time to reach out online and make a few more Halo friends and play some games with people and just generally keep your day busy.
Hooray!
Hooray!
And until next time,
Evolved.
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 Again.